My God, nothing happened on SmackDown. Great way to start a podcast, of course. I am your host, Tempest, and you're sitting in my chair, Luke Owen.
Oh, I'm sitting in my chair.
There is a hierarchy of chairs we've decided
I
at this
have
place.
to sit in this chair. If I don't sit in this chair, the room doesn't look the same.
Yes, but now I have to. My vision is slightly askew as I'm leading this SmackDown podcast. Here on the WrestleTalk Podcast channel, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we are going to get through this SummerSlam go-home show, even if it didn't feel like one.
No, we were saying before we came in that, like, the two big things on this show, which would be, like, you know, the Street Profits attacking the tag match and, you know, celebrating with Bobby Lashley on the ramp, and Shotzi attacking Bayley and Io Sky, aren't things to promote SummerSlam. Those are things to promote, like, you know, upcoming storylines, which is fine, but that only kind of works if you're also promoting SummerSlam at the same time. Like, there was no big angle to heat. Like, I know it doesn't need heating up, but to, like, the big go home angle for the Roman Reigns Jey Uso match.
Roman wasn't on the show.
Roman's not on the show. There was no big angle for the women's three-way. It was just three quite pointless, redundant video packages. And I say pointless and redundant because, well, they're just saying the things that they've always said and they've said previously before. So, like, it didn't add anything to the match that was already there. So, and the Battle Royal, I suppose, was the only thing that got some build on this. And it's the one match that no one cares about.
Everybody gets to pop because LA Knight did a thing, and I'm not going to say that's a bad thing because I will go on this SmackDown podcast every week and sing the praises of LA Knight and say he should be pushed. And he got a win on this show, and we'll get to all of it. But, man, to highlight, like, one thing on this show and have it be the Battle Royal is a bit appalling.
Yeah.
I will say that they did a good job with the video package of the Tribal Combat stip.
That was awesome.
That is exactly what I wanted to see out of this. It's funny, I would have just, like, taken what they did in this build on this show and put it last week. And I said last week that what they did wasn't revolutionary, wasn't crazy. But at the very least, you had a Jey Uso, Roman Reigns face-to-face promo.
Yeah.
That feels more like a go-home angle than anything we got on this show.
I suppose the go-home angle, if you will, was that Jey has taken out Solo, so Solo likely won't be a factor in the match. They were sort of trying to put that over on commentary, but it didn't really feel like that's what Jey did. He hit him with the chair a couple of times, but it's not like, oh man, there's no way that Solo ain't going to be at SummerSlam now.
Yeah, he didn't get stretchered out, he didn't get Pillmanized, didn't get none of that. He just hit him with the chair a few times. He, like, kept getting back up. He's like, no, stay down. And if he's getting up from chair shots after 10 seconds, I think he'll be fine.
I mean, Solo's this big unit of a man anyway.
Yeah.
But I suppose, like, maybe, like, should we stick with the Jey Uso stuff before we get into the main portion of the show?
I think so, because this show, the big, meaty angle, in quotation marks, chunk of this show, was Paul Heyman is in the ring, and Paul Heyman takes us through the history of Tribal Combat. He sets up a video package narrated by himself with interviews with Rikishi and the Wild Samoans who talk about this has been throughout Samoan culture. Only the tribal chief wears the lei. He wears the lei when he goes into Tribal Combat and there is one man remaining. It's very well done.
It's so awesome.
I've wanted the elders, whoever they may be, in this case, Wild Samoans, Rikishi, I've wanted them involved in this storyline, like, for months and months and months. And I just thought we weren't going to get it when they weren't part of Roman Reigns' 1,000-day celebration and everything.
Yeah, or, like, they'll just be at the end of SummerSlam to present the late. And they still might. They still might do that. Like, Rikishi might be there as well.
Yeah, but it had felt like a lot of tell, don't show with, like, oh, the elders will do this. The elders have said that. And that's fine, but I would have liked an inclusion, and now we've gotten it. So it really popped me. And then we go back to the ring after we've wrapped up this very nice video package. And you have Paul Heyman saying that what happened to Jimmy Uso was not the fault of Roman Reigns. It was the fault of Jey Uso because of everything that has happened. But what at SummerSlam happens to Jey Uso is going to be the blame of Roman Reigns. He says he doesn't say it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler, because he's like, I'm not even going to say that. Roman Reigns is just going to kill this fellow. So for all the people keeping track of all the times Paul has said it's not a prediction, it's a spoiler, and does that mean it's a guarantee he's going to win? And if he doesn't say it, then they're going to lose. That whole thing. I don't know if people still care about that. It's been a while, but
It's been a while.
But that's where he gets cut off by Jey Uso, who comes down to the ring. And he says that he's going to go and he's going to hit Roman with sticks and chairs, and he's going to put the head of the table through a table. And
Yeah, he likes tables so much, I'll put him through one.
so all the people pop for that because everybody likes to chant, "We want tables." And he gets then interrupted by Solo Sikoa, who, of course, comes down, doesn't say anything, he doesn't speak. He comes down, and Jey tells him, Solo, you are my brother, and therefore I will always forgive you. But you're being manipulated by Roman and by Heyman the same way that I was. And Paul Heyman starts to say, you really expect Solo to believe this? And Solo just kind of like looks at him and stops him in his tracks. He's like, oh dear. Getting the idea that maybe Solo is starting to think for himself. We've seen that the last few weeks where Solo seems to be really interested in Roman Reigns' lay and that sort. And Paul kind of turns Solo away and says, like, come here, let's have a little one-to-one. Let's have a little chat here. And as they're doing this, Solo gets super kicked by Jey. So that was the segment in the middle here to set up the main event, which came later. That was Jey Uso versus Solo Sikoa. Any thoughts in general on the promo segment?
I mean, it was good. It's the usual kind of good stuff you get out of Heyman and Jey. And like Solo is a great presence for not saying anything. I think he's like the moment when, he just gives Paul that look to be like, don't talk for me. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really, and Paul then trying to drag him away from the conversation to be like, look, we'll talk about this one-on-one, trying to manipulate him. I thought all that stuff's pretty good. It's ground we've trodden before, but it is also just planting those seeds for, the next chapter of this storyline, presumably when Roman retains tonight.
Yeah. What
comes next? Like I gave my, some theories on the SummerSlam prediction podcast we did a couple of days ago. Maybe they'll do a triple threat at Payback, or even a fatal four-way. You do both Uso, Solo, and Roman for the title. Mm-hmm. But I think I don't think Jey's winning tonight.
No.
Because I feel like we are setting up Roman versus Solo in a one-on-one match. And that's kind of what this is for. Like, this is so in that way, it's a good segment in promoting SummerSlam, but also giving you a tease of here's another match that's going to come afterwards.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when we had that year of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar after SummerSlam 21, where every time Paul Heyman would cut a promo, it would be like, it's not bad because Paul Heyman can't cut a bad promo. Anytime he opens his mouth, he delivers just an excellent soliloquy, but it does feel like we are hearing the same things. And it felt a little bit like that in this one, where he talked about, it's on you, Jey. It's not Roman. It's you. You're to blame for all this. It felt a little bit samey, like we've heard it before.
Even like a tease of Solo, turning around. We have trodden that path as well. Like, it's good to keep that plate spinning, but I actually think a more effective segment would have just been the video package.
Yeah.
And then you had because they, at the start of the show, they kind of cut to backstage and there's Solo like looking stoically and there was Jey like walking backstage trying to hype himself up. For me, I thought those were actually more effective in hyping the main event of Jey versus Solo than this segment was. So you could have just had those two things, the video package to explain tribal combat and then the main event. And I think I don't think this segment achieved much outside of things we've already achieved.
Yeah, I agree, and it is a shame that this was kind of the big segment to set up SummerSlam, which is a really big show, don't get me wrong, but I shouldn't say I only watched SmackDown. I watched every show last week, but having watched SmackDown a lot this year, it does feel like we haven't quite made the Roman and Jey match as big as it could have been.
This doesn't feel as big as the tag match.
No.
For Money in the Bank.
For as much story as has been part of this bloodline deal between Roman and Jey especially, like, I was expecting a lot more character to be involved.
I'm glad you said this because I started to think it was me.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching this episode of SmackDown this morning, and I just thought to myself, I was like, why am I not as excited for this? And I was like, it has to be me because this is like the biggest thing in WWE right now. It's probably the biggest storyline in wrestling and has been for some time, but I'm not feeling it. And I was like, it must be me. I must be like, maybe I haven't had enough coffee. Maybe I'm just like, I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm just not quite feeling it. So I'm glad that I'm not alone in going into this. It's not like I'm not excited.
I think that'll be a great match.
Once the bell rings, it'll be the most incredible drama because it always is.
Yeah.
But I went into like the Civil War match at Money in the Bank hyped beyond all belief before the bell rang. I don't feel that same level of hype as I did for that or for the Sammy match or the Cody match or, you know, or the even like Kevin and Sammy versus Roman and Solo.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel, I don't know, I feel like this one feels like it's the most I've been like, this will be good, but I'm not like, God, I can't wait for this.
You know what I think it is? I don't think anyone thinks Jey can win.
Which I
and
find
all those other matches were all like, but maybe.
And I find that surprising as well because I really thought that people might be more on Jey. This will be the moment that Jey wins. But it's almost since they announced Payback.
Mm-hmm.
That's been where I was like, oh, well, that's the title. That's the show that he won the belt. He probably ain't winning it at SummerSlam.
Right.
I was like, I don't know if that was the moment, but I really thought it would be more of a divided, could it be Roman, could it be Jey? But no, I was going through the comments on the predictions video, and everyone's like, nah, it's Roman.
Yeah.
And you're going through your Wrestle League predictions, you're like, yeah, it's Roman.
Yeah.
It ain't no one else but Roman winning this match.
It's really wild to me, and I don't want to just harp on this one in particular thing because I feel like we talk about it every single week. But this, to me, is so much of a bigger match without the title. Because if this was just tribal combat to be the head of the table, I would think Jey would have a really good shot at winning.
That's a good point.
And progressing the story. But because he's still got this albatross of a title around his neck, it's just, well, he's going to hold on to this title until WrestleMania probably, and therefore can't lose the big title match. And maybe I'll be shocked. And if I am, I will jump 6 feet out of my chair, but it won't build the excitement leading into the match for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I'm looking forward to the match because it's a Roman Reigns match.
Yeah.
But I'm not stoked for the match because of the story going into it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I still think this will be, I still think, and I wonder if actually that's why I don't feel as hyped as I am for SummerSlam this year, because like that I'm not stoked for going into it. I'm so tired of Cody and Brock. I saw Seth and Finn at the last pay-per-view. The triple threat, I don't think the build has been very good at all.
Should be a great match.
It'll be, but that's the thing as well. Like, you know, Seth and Finn, I think they'll have a good match.
Yep.
Cody and Brock, they've had 2 good matches before. They'll have a good match. The triple threat, it's Asuka, Charlotte, and Belair. I would be amazed if they managed to have a bad match because, like, those 3, it'll be great. I'm just not like frothing at the mouth for SummerSlam.
It's wild, and it is kind of funny because I think there was I think people thought Roman was going to lose, but you look at something like WrestleMania and a lot of the matches that were on that card, especially like the women's matches, like Rhea and Charlotte and stuff, and it had horrible builds, but hopefully people will look past that and only remember the great matches.
Sasha Bianca.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what we could be looking at with this SummerSlam.
Totally,
like coming out of it, this could be like pay-per-view of the year, the big show WWE has been building to all year, and maybe people will just forget that the build was
Yeah.
or as our thumbnail says, meh. But this does, of course, lead to the main event, that being Jey Uso versus Solo Sikoa. And it's funny to me because both Jey Uso versus Sami Zayn and Jey Uso versus Solo Sikoa, those, like, the first time both of those matches have happened, they've just been nothing matches on SmackDown.
I'm so surprised. Like, when they announced this match, I was like, whoa! It was just out of the blue. And like, they trying to make this be Bleacher Report, revealed that it was going to be this match. They're trying to make it feel like a big deal, but just kind of announcing out of the blue, it's Jey versus Solo. Like, hot dog, that should be a big match. And it should feel like a big match, but it sort of didn't when it actually happened. And it was just it was okay. Like, it was good.
Yeah.
But then, like, I'm there watching him and like, well, surely Jey's got to win because he's got the title match tomorrow night. But also, are you just going to beat Solo?
The answer to that question was yes.
Turns out, yeah. It turns out they're just going to beat Solo. Clean as a sheet in the middle of the ring. Just beat him.
Just beat him.
Yeah.
I was shocked. Because
stunned.
for as protected as this man was leading into his first loss against Cody, I thought for sure, like, he's not losing another match until he's challenging Roman or something like that. And it's just now he just kind of he's still the enforcer. He's still a brick house, but he does just kind of lose matches now.
Got pinned in the tag match at Crown Jewel, which makes sense because
Night of Champions.
Night of Champions, even you're right, because you're not pinning Roman there, so like that's why Solo was there to take the pin. But then for a guy that you've been doing this great job of protecting, all of a sudden you're then putting him in a position where it's like, well, we've got to put him there to take the pin.
Yeah.
So so all that work we did in protecting him just for those. But then like Cody beat him, which makes sense. That was the Wardlow thing going into WrestleMania, and then I still got this idea in my head. Oh no, but he's still this well-protected character who doesn't take random losses. But here, just beat him. Beat him with, like, I thought it'd be shenanigans, an F finish, something. Nope. Just hit the spear, hit the splash, pinned him 1, 2, 3.
Could have had Paul get involved and accidentally cost him the match to further that.
Totally.
Be like, stare a hole through Paul at the end of the show.
Absolutely. But it felt like Jey picking up the win here was like pinning Grayson Waller.
Yeah.
Just like, I got a big win, or it wouldn't be a big win pinning Grayson Waller, I suppose, but I got a win going into SummerSlam.
Yeah, I mean, this match, like you said, it was fine. They brawled on the outside. They tried to tear apart the announce table, and they seemed as if Solo was going to hit the spinning Solo through the announce table, and he didn't. Went back in the ring, hit a belly-to-belly suplex, and they came back from commercial, and Solo was just holding on to nerve hold, my favorite move in all of wrestling.
I learned this from Spock.
The Vulcan neck bench. No, stupid. You got it much too high. It's down here where the shoulder meets the neck. But they just kind of kept going, and then finally Jey hit a spear and a splash and pinned him. That was your main event. And they did, I want to say a brawl, but that might be putting it a little bit too harshly. Really, Solo just kind of like grabbed a chair, and Jey took the chair from him, hit him with it like 4 or 5 times, sent him over the barricade, hit him with it one last time, and stood tall. And that was your go off the air angle for SummerSlam.
Do you know what this show felt like? It felt like it was taped last week.
A little bit.
Because this show felt like we're going overseas for a show, so we need to tape next week's SmackDown in advance. But because you had the Brawling Brutes match that got sort of set, I was like, yeah, that really feels like a taped show thing.
Yeah.
And then like there's Alina Vega, I was like, yeah, that feels like a taped show. This main event, yeah, this feels like a taped show. But it wasn't. It was a live episode of SmackDown.
People of Dayton, Ohio paid to be there.
Yeah. Really wild.
Yeah. So we kind of went over all of the Bloodline bits on this show, and it is funny because I've heard a lot of people this year say that this is Jey Uso's story, therefore Jey Uso must win the title, and I've never thought exactly that was going to happen, but there's definitely been a contingent of fans that have, and meanwhile, you've had some people, including my regular co-host, Sat, sitting in your chair, buddy, keeping it warm for you, who would go out and say that what happens after SummerSlam? What do you do with Jey Uso, world champion? Who does he face next that's not Bloodline related? Does that continue to hold steam? And it's always been like, maybe not.
It's the Kofi Mania thing, right?
Now you look at it and you just look at this show with no Roman and how everything kind of feels surrounding the Bloodline without him.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of always been the problem with the Bloodline. You look at that month after WrestleMania when Roman was like, he took his month's break and they were just like, oh, we're just going to do the Usos versus Sami and Kevin again. We're literally going to tell the exact same story we told going into WrestleMania again. and pretend that it's different now.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, this storyline sucks without Roman. And then Roman came back and all of a sudden became the greatest thing again. But I mean, I'm watching this show and without Roman, and actually, maybe this is just my raw reviewing heart. Without the Judgment Day, like a lot of WWE just feels, it's just kind of a lot of it's just there. And without those two kind of forces on this show, and I agree with Zach's point about Jey, and I mentioned Kofi Mania. Kofi Mania was this incredible moment, but there was no follow-up to it, and it felt like there was never going to be any follow-up to it. And I feel that would be the same thing if Jey won the belt.
Yeah. We'll see, ultimately. It'll come down to the main event of SummerSlam, which you can watch along with us here on the WrestleTalk Podcast channel later on today with this fine fellow and Dan Layton.
That's right.
We're going to be doing a very fun live reaction for this year's SummerSlam.
But I believe Dan is bringing in a fridge.
Oh?
Because he's going to be making cocktails throughout the night. We're literally going to have the biggest party of the summer with 2 people in a basement in Hackney.
Sounds like a party I want to be part of. I didn't get an invite to Dan's cocktail party.
Join us here on the WrestleTalk Podcast channel later for that.
Yeah, we're going to get into the rest of our SmackDown review here. Make sure, of course, again, that you like this video. Subscribe to the WrestleTalk Podcast channel if you haven't already. Ring that bell if you haven't to stay notified. Let us know what you thought of the Bloodline go-home angles in the comments down below. In the meantime, however, we started this show with LA Knight, so it is a very good thing that they started off this show with a bang, because I don't think it got much more heated than this, because he comes out and he cuts a promo, and I really like that regardless of how long he has, LA Knight gets to cut a promo on SmackDown every week.
Yeah.
It gives me very big Jericho and WCW kind of vibes where it can be 30 seconds, but he just needs to cut a promo on his way to the ring. Maybe he'll have one of the weeks where he gets to talk in the ring a little bit, but it gives him that little extra, just a little bit extra sprinkle of time just to be able to get himself over.
Yeah.
And he's one of the people where if you gave everybody the chance to cut a 30-second promo on the way to the ring, most of them would probably be terrible, Yeah. I don't know how many of the people on the roster, what percentage of them would be able to capitalize on something like that, but obviously LA Knight is one of them.
Oh, yeah. He's so good at this. And always has been as well. You go back to like the Eli Drake days, and this is what got him over. Like, you go back to those Eli Drake days and the people the big Impact fans that were still there for that point, that, singing the praises of him on forums and stuff. I remember like on the Figure 4 forums and stuff, people were like, he's the only good thing in Impact, really. And everyone was like, he just feels like The Rock. Like, this feels like a genuine, could be the next Rock level guy. He's just, he's kind of stuck in Impact Wrestling. But it's great here, you're 10 years later, he's on the main roster in WWE and is absolutely killing it. And commentary going out of their way to point out how over like Rover this man is. Michael Cole even said, like, he feels like a throwback to the Attitude Era. Like, they are driving home hard how over this man is, which does fill me with some confidence. I said on the SummerSlam prediction show, he's got a stench of Zack Ryder about him, which is that the fans want to push him, but the company doesn't. And because it's that way round, we want to push him, they don't, that they often just throw the fans a bone. That's why this Battle Royal's on the pay-per-view, because they haven't given us an LA Knight win on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So they're giving us this Battle Royal to give us an LA Knight moment. Almost as a way of like, see, we gave Zack Ryder the US Championship. We do listen to the fans.
But Luke, this is all about the sponsorship money. It's all about Slim Jim.
Could be that
as well. All I had to hear on Twitter when I suggested moving this Battle Royal to the pre-show.
Well, yeah, I have Slim Jim sponsor something else.
There's that.
There's always something else you could do.
I mean, god damn. The Intercontinental Triple Threat at WrestleMania was sponsored by Mike's Hard Lemonade. The Mysterio match was sponsored by a cereal. This is not something that has been new to them. The Mountain Dew match. Not using that as a positive example, of course.
The blood feud between Edge and Balor was there to promote the latest Russell Crowe movie.
Yeah.
Like they do, brand integration for bigger matches,
Yeah.
if you will. So yeah, I don't think you needed to have this battle royal on the show. Plus, particularly because it's kicked off Becky and Trish, and kicked off Rhea and Raquel, which I think really does suck for them. But it's almost like I think WWE are in that place with it's a rock and a hard place thing, because you put on Becky and Trish and Raquel and Rhea, but then people are mad at you that you didn't give LA Knight something to do on the show. So you give LA Knight something to do on the show, but you also don't want to do a show that's too long. Because if you do, people are like, the show is too long. So you have to, something has to be taken off the card. In my world, I'd have done the Becky Trish match, because you've been building it since WrestleMania.
Yep.
So that'd be the match I would do rather than the Battle Royal. But I also look at it and be like, I get why they made the choice that they made. It's just not the choice I would have made.
Nope. It wouldn't be the choice that I would make. And, I don't have the rundown of their show. I don't know how they've blocked it out thus far, but there aren't that many matches on this show.
There's 8, including the Battle Royal.
Yeah, that's not that many.
And Triple H he's kept it to 7 max,
Yeah.
really. So this feels like the longest show that he's booked.
And that might be the case. And I don't get me wrong, I've loved the more takeover style where it's there are only 6-7 matches. They all get time. They're all different. That's great. But you could probably have the fight pit match or the MMA rules match go a few minutes if it's supposed to be a MMA rules thing. You could probably have Logan Paul and Ricochet be 9,
10,
cut
11.
some video package. Cut Kid Rock.
That's what I was about to say. Cut Kid Rock off the show.
Sorry.
I made this joke on the WrestleTalk News. It hasn't gone out yet, so I don't know how the joke's gone over. But I said, dude hasn't been relevant since 2001. I don't know why we're giving time to Kid Rock other than he is from the area. You'd have done better putting Insane Clown Posse on the show if that's the whole reason you're doing this.
Throw some money at Eminem.
Yeah, really. I Kid Rock. I bought Devil Without a Cause, but that was in 1998. I'm not looking forward to something. I'm being like, man, I can't wait to hear Kid Rock do his terrible ZZ Top song that he had, which was also, by the way, 15 years ago. It's probably 10 years ago or something. But anyway.
Anywho, we got massively off track here. LA Knight won. Yay! Positivity.
Yeah, he beat Sheamus. It was LA Knight versus Sheamus. Everyone who's announced for the Battle Royal thus far kind of came down. Miz was there.
It's turned into a lumberjack match.
Yeah, a little bit. AJ was out there with Mia Yim. Karrion Kross came down. Grayson Waller was there. Who else came out?
It's Austin Theory jumped Santos Escobar at a point. Caused that brawl. Because this was just a match at first. It was set up last week, and they were just doing a match. Unfortunately, at one bit, they did have a pretty massive botch where they were going for what appeared to be a superplex or something like that. And instead, they did just kind of slip and fall off the top rope.
Fell down.
It happens. Yep. It sucks. But, it points off. Has to be. But they get back in the ring. They keep going. Eventually, this leads to everybody and their mother coming down to the ring. And they didn't interfere in the match. They didn't throw them back in the ring and actually be lumberjacks. But this was basically a lumberjack match from that point.
Yeah.
They were all surrounding the ring, and it led to a brawl, which led to the finish. And that's every lumberjack match ever.
Yeah. And because it's a Battle Royal promotion, someone gets into the ring afterwards, and LA Knight threw them over the top rope to the floor.
That's how he's going to win the Battle Royal. Because, yes, Miz gets cocky, and he ends up being pulled up onto the apron, and Sheamus gives him his clubbering forearms, and then turns right around into the BFT. That's the finish. LA Knight wins. Thumbs up for that. And then he threw someone over the top rope. I don't remember who it was. But he then ran into the crowd as Grayson Waller and Karrion Kross were both like, we're going to get you at the pay-per-view. I was like, why are you two not fighting each other?
Well, they're baddies.
Yeah, I guess. I'll take that answer.
Yeah,
I like when heels are just when all heels band together and are just we have bonded by being bad. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it was totally fine, I guess. I feel sorry for Sheamus, particularly because he had that interview this week where he was like, man, all of that momentum I had coming out of Clash of the Castle has been wasted. Mm-hmm. He was very open and honest, being like, I had so much organic momentum from Clash of the Castle, and this company absolutely effed it. And I'm now I'm just so low down on the card now.
Yep.
Pete kept saying, "Oh, Sheamus is going to be the guy to dethrone Walter," and I'm like, I think
not right now. He's not.
I was like, that story's dead and buried. Like that story. Like, well, they can just do it again and pretend that but they have not been doing that story.
No. And I'll be perfectly honest, some things didn't change, and it's just how people have been used. But the draft has killed SmackDown.
Yeah, really has.
It has absolutely obliterated the quality of this show. And maybe that's just what happens when you move Walter from one show to the other, but it has left such a gaping hole in this show. And I can't believe that they moved Sheamus and Walter to other brands. That is just incomprehensible to me. But it does kind of cascade throughout the whole show, where now all of a sudden people who had organic rivalries and were getting over because of a certain thing don't have that thing. And the certain guys that were moved to fill voids, like I think Edge has been on this show like 3 times since he got drafted.
Yeah, he's on in 2 weeks' time.
He's on 2 weeks when they're in Toronto, which is going to be really nice. I've got some friends that are going to that show, and it's like, I wish I could be there, but I've seen Edge live a few times now. I saw him at his appreciation night in Toronto when he had retired that year. So like, I've seen the Edge celebration. I've seen an Edge main event match live. I'm satisfied. Yeah, for sure. But there's not a lot on this show, unfortunately, because backstage we then had the Brawling Brutes and the OC are yelling at each other because they were amongst those scuffling in the brawl, and Adam Pearce says to go settle it in the ring, and Sheamus and AJ Styles kind of have a tense stare down, and I was like, ooh, that's fun. Haven't seen that before.
That's a fun feud.
Why is AJ Styles feuding with Karrion Kross still? He could be doing this.
Well, assuming that ends next week. I thought it ended like 2 weeks ago.
I thought it ended like 2 months ago. And yet they're still going. But this then led to the match, which was the Brawling Brutes and the OC. A match that didn't get much of a reaction, unfortunately. It was fine. Luke Gallows hit a fall-away slam, so instantly 5 stars from me. My favorite move in all of wrestling. And then abruptly, this match ended with a DQ as the Street Profits ran in and attacked both teams, and they were wearing suits or dress clothes, and they beat both teams up, and they left, and they were kind of mean and snarling and that sort, and they hugged Bobby Lashley up on the stage, and this is the first time we've seen this trio in action, other than just being shown, showing Angelo Dawkins how to dress backstage and segments like that. So this is very exciting. I like this trio a lot. Street Profits haven't done a thing since they moved to SmackDown. Bobby Lashley hasn't done a thing since he moved to SmackDown. All 3 of these guys are fantastic, and I want to see them do more. And now, hopefully, we'll have some sort of direction for all 3 of them.
Be curious to see as well whether they're presented as baby faces or heels, because they were kind of presented as heels in this segment. But when Bobby Lashley came out, it felt like one of the biggest baby face on the show. The crowd erupted into Bobby chants.
People were really hyped to see the Street Profits, and maybe that's because we haven't seen them in a while. Maybe it's just because they didn't really care to cheer either of the other 2 teams, and thus a star team showed up. Maybe they're just really digging this Bobby Lashley pairing. Either way, I think it's a really good start to whatever they're doing here.
This is also Carl Anderson's second match in 2 weeks. He must be furious. I didn't get paid to work around here. Yeah. I'm not coming to TV.
This was the next up. We had the first of the 3 short vignettes from the women's triple threat participants. This first one was Charlotte Flair. She sat on a yacht.
She's on a boat.
And she says that she's the queen and she's going to win the title and be a 15-time champion. It's every Charlotte promo you've ever heard in your life.
Only this time, it was on a boat. She's on a boat. A gold boat.
A gold boat. This was then when we had the Paul Heyman and Sikoa and Jey Uso thing that we talked about earlier. And then we had Austin Theory backstage saying that he was going to dedicate his match with Santos Escobar to Rey Mysterio. Because look, Santos, look what you did to your mentor. Because Rey Mysterio suffered whiplash last week, I believe is what they said on commentary. This then led to a entirely heatless match between Austin Theory and Cameron Grimes.
My first notes I wrote down was Kayla interviews Austin Theory. I forgot he was the US champ. And then Austin Theory took on Cameron Grimes. Like, I also forgot that Cameron Grimes is on the main roster.
Yeah, it's sure easy to forget that right now. I do not believe what they have done to my boy. My boy.
Like, he's not even a guy.
Nope.
He's a body on the roster.
He has been reduced to the most generic version of himself.
Yeah. This felt like an NXT appearance as opposed to someone who was part of the main roster of SmackDown having a match with the United States champion.
Yeah, it's like back in like the Full Sail days where every once in a while you'd get somebody where if you were a real hardcore fan, you might go like, oh, I know that person, but they wouldn't be given any sort of fanfare leading in.
Like James Storm.
Yeah, like a James Storm or even lower than that. Like when Kimberly showed up.
Yeah.
And she was kind of an enhancement talent where they would have like a semi-competitive match and then lose, but they were never presented as like, this is Kimberly, Princess Kimberly from, all these different promotions, world travel performer, such and such. They're just like, oh, this is a person. They're going to wrestle and then they're going to lose and you'll forget. But I've seen Cameron Grimes be one of the most charismatic characters on NXT for a long time. And I know that they were like trimming that character while he was in NXT, which I didn't understand then either. But man, like, you cannot bring this man up to the main roster, pair him with Baron Corbin for like a month, then do nothing with him afterwards, and then put him in a match where he takes 95% of the match, then gets hit with a finish and loses.
So he hits the cave-in, because Santos Escobar comes out. So he hits the cave-in immediately and has the match won, but rolls Theory into the ropes.
Yeah.
So Theory gets a rope break, which Theory didn't do. Like, that was Cameron Grimes made a mistake by rolling him into it. And then he just beat the piss out of Austin Theory around the ring and in the ring, and Austin Theory hit a desperation finish and got the win. And they were like, man, Austin Theory survived that. And I'm like, he's the champion.
Yep.
Why does he suck so bad? And this guy over here got hit with one move and got pinned.
I thought that they were going to do the U.S. title match on this show, like as a preview SummerSlam match.
Yeah.
They do that sometimes. And they had Santos beat Austin Theory clean as a sheet in a non-title match 2 weeks ago. And then he's just out there just beating guys again like that didn't happen. And that was just part of the feud, as if that's a thing that you do with your champion.
Yep.
I don't want to blow a gasket about Austin Theory on every single one of these shows, but I am losing my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
It's absolutely maddening. And I thought when he hit that like flash cave-in, I was like, oh my God, he's going to beat him in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And they'll do a triple threat match or something like that. And maybe this will be the start of Cameron Grimes at least being a good hand in a triple threat match, making a match maybe a little bit better than it would have been. But no, this was just another infuriating match.
Speaking of guys that are just like, I do not get the appeal of, because I'm in reference to Austin Theory. There was someone in the comments on the SummerSlam predictions that were really mad at us for not liking Austin Theory. And I was there being like, I don't get the appeal of Austin Theory at all. Like, I do not get the appeal of Grayson Waller. Like, good talker, sure. But
he has a certain presence about him.
I mean, he's got nice shirts. But he just, like, I described him on the 3 count once as SmackDown's Miz. Yeah. And, like, that's all I see in this dude is just SmackDown's Miz, and he's just a guy.
It doesn't help. See, when he was wrestling in NXT and he had like his douchebag style actually worked with his in-ring style, and he's a little bit more interesting in ring than someone like Miz, I was seeing then what set them apart. But now he's just doing Miz TV every week.
He's the same character as the Miz.
Yeah.
Like, it really is just the same character. Like, this is Control-C, Control-V.
Well, talk about Control. Who was his partner or his guest on his show, but Damage Control.
Yeah.
This followed, of course, Asuka's vignette thing where she just said she's got a plan. No one's ready for Asuka. These are the same things we've seen people say a million times. But Damage Control's on the Grayson Waller effect, and I said in my review that I think my biggest pet peeve in all of wrestling is just heel talk show segments now.
Yeah.
I
could do without them.
We have moved past the need for a heel talk show segment. I don't care if it was Happy Talk, if it's Miz TV, if it's the Grayson Waller effect.
Ding dong hello.
Ding dong hello. I don't care how over you are. If you are not Kevin Owens with your comedic timing, I don't need to see it. It advances nothing, because you can get the same out of these things with just a promo segment. And yeah, you get to maybe dress up the ring a little bit and make it feel different. Maybe someone will click on it on YouTube or something. But for goodness sake, they go into the ring here, and Waller's question is, Io, are you going to cash in at SummerSlam? And they're like, we're not going to tell you. That's it.
That's it.
That's the segment.
This got no reaction. Like, Bayley talked over Io, so, you know, more of, like, the seeds are there, but...
They've been planting these seeds since
I was going to
WrestleMania.
say, I can't say they're planting seeds, because the seeds are already planted.
They're watering the seeds.
Watering them, but, like, look at them and be like, this thing isn't growing. Why isn't this growing yet? But, like, this was getting no reaction, and then they tried to do this fake ruse thing, which they'd also done on Miz TV a handful of weeks ago, where Grayson Waller played Shotzi's laugh over the speakers.
Bayley.
And Bayley cacked her pants. And then they were like, I was like, I fooled you. And then Shotzi's music played and the tank came in and he's like, this isn't me. Crikey. And, and like nothing was getting over in this segment. The crowd were just like dead as a doornail for it.
Yeah.
And then okay, if I may blow a gasket, I'm not going to blow a gasket over this, but may I highlight just how bad the staging of this was?
Please.
Because the gimmick of this was that Shotzi comes out on the ramp in the tank, and Bayley sends Io out of the ring to go and get the tank. So Io gets out of the ring, and she stands there, and she stares at this tank, and she's like, ooh, I'm going to get you, tank. I'm going to get you, Shotzi, on the tank. Because into the ring, Shotzi's now got Bayley on her own. And she's got some clippers. And the big question is, why didn't Io just turn around and be like, there's Shotzi, I can now back up my girl? Because they're just standing in the ring for ages. Well, I was like, what happened to Io? Is she just standing there staring at the tank? What is this segment? And then Shotzi gets out some clippers, and they play audio of clipper sounds over the loudspeakers, just going, brrr. It sounds like a lawnmower. Brrr. I was like, this is so stupid and childish, and I feel like an idiot for watching it. And then that was it. And then it turns out it was Vega in the tank, and then Vega beats Io Sky. And why does Vega beat Io Sky? I'll tell you why, because Io Sky's got the briefcase, and it doesn't matter, apparently, because you just beat the person who's got the briefcase, because they're doing it to Damian Priest as well. Priest is getting pinned left, right, and center, and he was doing it in the lead up to Money in the Bank, because the argument is, well, he's going to win Money in the Bank. It doesn't matter if we beat him beforehand. Now he's got the briefcase. Doesn't matter if we beat him. He's got the briefcase. Same thing with Sky. Just beat her and beat her and beat her. Doesn't matter. She's got the briefcase. She'll cash in and win the title, and all of it's forgotten. Wins and losses don't matter. And I hate that.
You know, I think the people who write this show are dumb.
Certainly in this segment.
You know?
I got the combination of the two things. I didn't like much of this at all.
No, I didn't either. I didn't understand why Zelina Vega was helping Shotzi. They've never had anything to do with one another, and I understand that Zelina was Io's opponent on this show, but this didn't give her an advantage over Io in any way. It was just, okay, they're working together. Maybe they both have tag team amnesia as well. Yeah. The horror of it all. And yeah, they just had a match, and at some point, Shotzi kind of like throws Bayley back through the curtain, stumbles out onto the stage, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna cut your hair.
It's such a loud noise.
And it distracts Io enough for Zelina to hit a power bomb where Io had been on the top rope. She hits a power bomb. Io kind of rolls through, and Zelina hits the code red and pins her. And I just said that I think my biggest pet peeve is heel talk show segments. I lied. It's actually when they just beat Money in the Bank holders.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Tempest, they just got to win the title, so it doesn't matter how much you beat them beforehand.
They're just stupid. They're just stupid and wrong.
It's a backwards mindset.
How did they ever come to that conclusion? That beating the person who's about to be the big star is an acceptable booking philosophy?
I have no idea. Remember that Road Dogg interview where he was talking about wins and losses don't matter and then talked himself into saying that wins and losses do matter?
Yep, I sure do.
It's so funny because that is the WWE mindset. They've convinced themselves that wins and losses don't matter, but in explaining it, explain how wins and losses do matter.
All of their brains have melted.
Oh, yeah. It's been boiled. Like, Triple H, for all the good that Triple H has done, he is still WWE Triple H, who has had all of the bad habits of WWE boiled within his brain. And just people, and like, they just convince themselves that this makes sense and we're right and the fans are wrong. And it doesn't matter what we think. You just beat the person who's got the briefcase. Doesn't matter because they're going to win the title and no one will remember.
Yeah. What we need to do is someone needs to like grab Triple H and tie him to a chair, like Clockwork Orange style, with his eyeballs, like his eyelids taped open, and just sit him there and make him watch on loop like 86 Crockett over and over and over again until he's been lobotomized and removed all of the bad booking habits that he's developed over here in WWE.
It's bad. You pick up a lot of bad habits, I guess. If you've been in the company for, the 30 odd years that he's been, you're going to pick up some bad habits along the way. Because he did this in NXT as well.
Yeah.
Like the bad habits were in NXT. For all the good in NXT, there was also a lot of main roster bad in there.
There sure was. And it may sound like we hated this show, and maybe I did, turns out. I didn't hate it watching it, but afterwards, when you start with the Battle Royal thing and you're like, that was a really fun start to the show, and then you realize, no, that was the peak.
Yeah.
Then it's like, maybe not. Because, the only other thing on this show is Bianca tells us that she's going to remind us all who she is at SummerSlam. She's going to win. She doesn't care if it's a triple threat. She's going to win the title back.
Yeah. So it's kind of just a nothing show.
Yeah.
And I sung the praises of Triple H on Raw when I was like, the go-home shows is not the best weapon in a Triple H booking arsenal. Like, he just doesn't do go-home shows. But Monday's Raw genuinely felt like a go-home show. This felt like we are trying to build stuff for SummerSlam. Nope, this episode did not feel like it was building towards the second biggest show of the year.
No.
This just felt like, I said earlier, a taped episode of SmackDown because they're going overseas for a tour.
Yeah.
This was a nothing happening episode of SmackDown.
It sure was, and it is a shame. It is a damn shame because I would like to be as excited as possible for this here episode of SummerSlam. Sure, this edition of SummerSlam. But I'm sure it'll be a good show. I'm looking forward to matches. Walter and Drew McIntyre are going to have a 5-star match probably.
It'll be awesome.
It'll be incredible.
That's the match I'm looking forward to. That's the match I'm super stoked for because that match is going to hump.
Yeah. There's a lot to look forward to, but my God, if this SmackDown did not remind you of that. That's pretty much it, though. So we do not currently have any podcast shoutouts. Those will be returning next week, so stay tuned if you have paid for lost my train of thought. If you have paid your $25 and above tier over on patreon.com/WrestleTalk to get your own custom wrestling nickname read out on a show just like this, stay tuned next week as we will begin our August edition of all of our Patreon names. In the meantime, Luke, thank you so much for joining me on this here SmackDown.
It's been a pleasure. I like doing podcasts with you a lot.
I quite like doing podcasts with you. It's nice to not be the one blowing a gasket for a change on this show.
It's fun, right?
Yeah.
Like I really enjoyed doing a podcast with you, and it was fun to talk about SmackDown and stuff. So thank you very much for having me on the episode today.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think we've ever done a SmackDown podcast before.
We've not. No, you and I have done Raw. We've done AEW, but this is I think it's our first Smacker. Certainly in person. We might have done them during the pandemic era, during the Thunderdome era.
Back when no one had anything to do on a Saturday. But thank you very much for watching this edition of the SmackDown Review Podcast. Make sure, of course, again, that you like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the WrestleTalk Podcast channel. Help get us to 80,000 subscribers. And make sure that you get the big ol' ring the bell. Ring the bell so you can be notified later on today when our SummerSlam live reactions go live. The biggest cocktail party of the summer with Dan Layton and this man right here, Luco. And I've been Tempest, your host. And that was SmackDown.
Jam that jam.